Well, hopefully this goes smoothly. So thank you all for having me. I'll tell you a little bit about me first, and then where my interest in menopause has kind of come from. So I am 42, so personally I'm kind of heading in that direction. I've got 2 kids. I'm a nurse and a midwife, and practiced as a midwife for the last 20 years. And then a couple of years ago, had the opportunity to complete a PhD, and that's not something I ever expected to be doing at this age, and never really believed I was clever enough to do it. But there we go. We all have like self-doubt, don't we? And I think the topic was aging, female aging, and sexuality. I thought, wow, what a topic. So then as we kind of delved into it, it was really looking at menopause and that transition, and what your sexual wellness means for you as you transition through this phase in your life. So I'm going to talk generally. I mean, in my work as a midwife, what I find is that women most definitely put themselves on the bottom of the pile, and we often don't actually understand how our bodies work. I think over the last couple of years, obviously with all the media coverage and things, menopause has taken a step up, rightly so, but we're absolutely nowhere near where it needs to be. And I think empowering women to understand how their own body works, and what they can do to help themselves, and where to find resources, and which questions to ask when you go to seek medical support, is really important. So I'm by no means an expert in menopause. You are the experts with your own bodies, but I hope that I could guide you and point you in the right direction for further support if need be. So I want to just say to you all that this topic is really emotive. It stirs feelings of lots of emotions when we talk about sexuality. The first part of my research has looked at a global perspective of women's thoughts and feelings about sex and sexual wellness, and actually it's a global feeling for lots of women, have senses of loss, distress, and so I just want to bear that in mind when we're talking tonight, okay? So just take your time. If you've got any questions, please just ask. So I will try now to share this presentation. Sorry, for some reason this isn't sharing. 1 second. Hang on, try this. Okay, just bear with me a second. No pressure. Sorry.
If it won't come through, it's fine for you to just kind of talk through the presentation.
I thought it might. It's just saying it can't share my screen. So I mean, I can send it to you all. Let me see if I can launch it on here.
not change settings our end, Michelle? It's all on their end, so.
Sorry ladies, just bear with me a second. I'm going to try and open it as a different tab.
We like to use them and someone just calls for anything like this one can see everything. I know where I'm at. But it would come up if you need information or anything. Yes. So there's space.
Okay, so okay, let's try again. See if this works. Okay. I may not be able to get it on the floor.
You see, I just walked up. There we go.
Yeah, can you see that, ladies?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So please don't. I can't see you at the moment. So I'm just going to talk through the slides. So this is me, and I'm just gonna talk to you a little bit today about your sex organs and menopause and what happens. Now, you may know a lot of this information, but I think it's really important because we talk about menopause all the time, and you go to see a doctor or a nurse and they gave you a list of 32 symptoms and you have to tick a box. And I think there's one question about sex, and it talks about a dry vagina and, issues with having sex. That really doesn't cut it, and we need to look at sex and talk about how it makes you feel and the symptoms. And so as a society, we're embarrassed to talk about sex and our sex organs. Going to the doctors to talk about a dry vagina isn't the same as saying you're having hot flushes. And I think lots of women deal with a lot of the other menopausal symptoms and don't prioritize their sexual wellness through menopause. So we've got our sex organs, our ovaries, our womb, our vagina, and the hormones which trigger all of these changes. So your ovaries. Now, normally I don't do slides with this much writing, but I thought if you were going to, I've sent Catherine a copy of the presentation, so it's just so you've got that background. So your ovaries, as you age, so females are born with the ovaries and they have been producing eggs, while they're in utero, so before they're born. And baby girls, when they're first born, if some of you have had daughters or have had little babies in the family, quite often little girls have, they call it the first period, so it's like a mucousy pinky discharge in their nappy in the first few days of their life. And that is the first ovulation. So although they don't, the hormones don't trigger menstruation till puberty, the ovaries are there and producing eggs and releasing eggs, although you can't get pregnant until you start puberty. So as you age, the reproductive cycle begins to slow down and prepares to stop. And at this stage, it's the perimenopause. So you might have experienced this where your cycle becomes unsettled. So you have a period, then you miss for 3 months, or you may have 3 consecutive ones with just a few days in between. So the cycle has been continuously functioning since puberty, and as the menopause nears, your ovaries make less of a hormone called estrogen. I'm sure you're all really aware of that hormone, guided by Catherine and her really positive voice about menopause. But when this decrease occurs, your menstrual cycle starts to change and it becomes irregular and can then stop. And at that point, 12 months after you haven't had a period, that is officially known as the menopause. Physical changes can also happen to your body as it adapts to the different level of hormones, and the symptoms you experience during each stage of the menopause, perimenopause and postmenopause, are all part of your body's adjustments to these changes. So what I'd like to say as well about the ovaries is that estrogen controls far more than just producing eggs. So it has effects on your the hormones that control your mood, your sleep, your appetite. All of those things are also affected by the estrogen that's released by the ovaries. So we'll talk about that in a minute. More frequent periods. So we're looking at the womb now. So the womb, like we just said, the endometrium, the lining of the womb, will shred, and that's where you have your period. But with menopause, they can become extremely heavy, clotty, painful, and it affects your whole life. Sorry, did somebody want to say something?
No.
No, sorry. Okay, I heard something. Sorry. So, so many women I've spoken to will say to me, Sarah, I cannot go to a work visit without taking a cushion with me, and I have to say it's for my back, but it's just in case I leak on the chair, or taking like almost puppy pads, she says, in the car with her and things. So there are lots of things we can do to help those symptoms with the change in the uterus lining, the endometrium. So periods can be longer, shorter, heavier or lighter, like we've just said, and eventually periods will become much less frequent until they stop completely. The lining of the womb, the endometrium, thins then at menopause, and the structure of the ovaries and the womb shrink in size. So they don't, that can also lead to symptoms, urinary symptoms, bowel symptoms, because of the change in size and structure of that organ. So the vagina. After menopause, the tissues of the labia minora, which is the kind of lips inside of the labia majora on the outside, the opening of the vagina and the urethra. So they can become dry, thin, which is called atrophy. So you can see on this diagram here the tissue before menopause and the tissue after menopause. So these result in things like irritation, really sore, and even when you're walking, women have described feelings of just bleeding, of chapped, really sore skin, and obviously because of the irritation around the urethra, you can also get cystitis, thrush, because the change in the pH is really common. So it's really important to know that these things are related to the menopause changes and to seek help. There are things available. So little hormones. So who have we got? So we've got, I'm sure you're aware of these, but again, I'll just go through. So estrogen is a regulator of serotonin, the feel-good hormone which stabilizes our mood and our happiness. And when levels of estrogen are low, we can feel emotional and overwhelmed. And although this is not a nice thing to talk about, it really horrified me when I looked, and this isn't really discussed in the press, but when I investigated mental wellness during the menopause transition, I was horrified to find that actually statistically in the female group of suicides, women who are at menopausal age are at the highest risk of suicide. So this is so important that we understand our bodies, that we understand that estrogen decline is causing some of these. So serotonin hormone, the little synapses, the little messages which pass between these hormones, which then start to increase them, that doesn't happen. Estrogen is that regulator. So if there's no estrogen there, it's like reaching out to hold somebody's hand and you just can't reach it. And probably that's a kind of a feeling, you know, that women experience anyway, by just having nobody there, nobody understanding how they feel. And those little serotonin in the brain are really important for how you regulate your mood, how well you feel, how happy you feel. So again, there are things we can do, and I think sometimes with menopause, quite often GPs will jump in and say, we'll give you some antidepressants, and this is replacing that serotonin. But we can do other things which increase the serotonin, and sex is one of those things. But that increases those levels, and it increases those feelings of contentment and happiness. So progesterone is a calming hormone which helps us sleep, and progesterone's really it's highest when you're pregnant, and so it helps helps you sleep and that intellectual function. So this is where the brain fog comes in. Progesterone is the guy for this, or the thing. Sorry, I shouldn't say guy. That's not fair. And can cause irritability, depression, and sleeping problems. Testosterone, more commonly known as the main hormone, but it is present in women in smaller amounts. And testosterone is another feel-good hormone. It gives you confidence, lowers stress, and increases positivity and affects the sex drive. So talking about low libido, not being interested in sex, just having that underwhelmed feeling. So together, they estrogen and progesterone control the menstruation cycle, and estrogen also influences how your body uses calcium. So when I talked just earlier about estrogen being responsible for far more than just, causing hot flushes and your menopause symptoms, it also regulates how your body uses the calcium. So you're more likely to develop osteoporosis, for example. Maintains cholesterol levels, which is why you can be at higher risk of having like heart disease or strokes. And it also supports sleep and mood hormones such as serotonin, oxytocin, and melatonin. So what we're going to do with these little buggers, I will say. So barriers to sex at menopause and beyond. So we've got, like I said to you earlier, you are the experts in your body. But what I've found when I did my first part of my study is that women are saying the same things. So they're saying, I've got no interest in sex. They're tired. The sense of duty to fulfill. Even so, we had two groups of women. So one group of women who had an absolutely fabulous relationship, and because they loved their partner, they wanted to kind of fulfill their sexual needs, even when they didn't feel like it. The second lot of women were women who had quite an abusive or a toxic relationship, and they just didn't really like the person that was wanting to have sex with them, but that sense of duty was overwhelming across, and really interestingly, across cultures and countries. So again, widowed or single women, grief and loss. So, and I'm not just talking about grief and loss to your own sex, because what women have said is, look, I had a great sex life before menopause, and then menopause has come along, and actually I feel like a piece of me is being taken away. I grieve that experience. But also things like, your life changes, your children move on, your parents may pass away, your partner may pass away, your job experiences change. So there's so much going on for women at this life stage that they can it's just overwhelming. So really, sex is on the bottom of the pile. Partner sexual problems, things like erectile dysfunction, incontinence, diabetes, those kinds of things. Again, responsibilities. So we may have empty nests, but we have other things which fill our lives completely, and we never stop. Incontinence, medication, so some hormonal contraceptive medication can affect your libido, your mood, and your vagina and the kind of moistness there. Depression, heavy bleeding, and pain. So this list is not exhaustive at all. Again, your experience, your body, but I just want to highlight some of those because sometimes some of those aren't obvious. And just be kind to yourself. So why sex matters? So we've already just touched a little bit on the sense of self. So when you achieve something, when you feel good, when you feel loved and supported and protected, now whether that's yourself providing that sense of positive self, or whether it's your partner that helps you achieve that's in itself just making you feel better. Confidence. So when we feel when those hormones are released, like I just mentioned, testosterone gives that sense of confidence, that sense of I can achieve anything. That was a really nice experience. I feel happy, I feel relaxed, I feel content, I feel more confident. Health benefits. So we talked about reducing, so that there's some evidence which is building that suggests that people who have more sex reduce the risk of Alzheimer's because of the dilation in the blood vessels when you're relaxed and you orgasm, and the fact that and reducing the risk of coronary heart disease and stroke, again because it reduces the cholesterol amounts and it relaxes you sleep better, and a reduction in stress. So treatments. So you may or may not have looked at some of these yourselves. So obviously there's HRT, which can help, vaginal progesterone, lubrication, CBT or counselling, encouraging conversations, which is what you're all doing now, which is fantastic. Education for women and for men, because actually if we don't know how good our body feels, so things are changing, but it doesn't mean that you can't have an enjoyable experience. It just means learning how to do it again. And so, educating, partners in your life. Obviously, some people have female partners, but generally, female partners they have a vagina as well, so they understand how it works, kind of thing. And I think men are sometimes, blamed and men don't understand, and we need to involve men in this conversation. They're going to have a better sexual experience if you are, and also I think they really want to find a solution. They often feel really helpless in this whole transition, and it can go on for a few years. So it's really important that you're a team and that we educate men as well as women. Natural treatments and masturbation. So again, that's something that people oh gosh, she said the word. It's really important that you know how your body works, how it feels for you, and if you're not able to have sex yourself, and this is obviously if you're wanting to do this. So I'm not saying you must be having lots of sex. I'm saying it's a healthy, natural part of aging. Why is it that we stereotype middle-aged and older people not having a sexual need or desire or life? We need to encourage these conversations. So it's really important to understand how your body works, learn how to please yourself and teach your partners to do the same. So further help and information can be found from your GP and nurse. I do understand how difficult it is to get in to see people. And shockingly, there's only 7, or the last time I looked, there was 7 specialist menopause clinics across the whole of the UK. So there's more and more now nurses training on the British Menopause Society course, which is really good, and they can then be employed by GPs in the practices that you might go to. Women's Health Concern, which is an absolute plethora of information. It's all evidence-based. It is the woman's arm of the British Menopause Society, so it's not medicalised. This is about women making information for women. Obviously, there is the British Menopause Society, which will have things like conferences, courses, information. Handpicked, which is looking more about work, and that website is developing all the time. Midlife Women Rock is another project, and Age, Sex and You. There are like hundreds and thousands now of menopause groups, and I've only just put a handful here that I have used that are evidence-based and are reputable. So I know there's loads, and I think the big thing as well is that the group that Catherine runs with all of you, that is so important, and that's how Midlife Women Rock started in Ireland. And it's just about women having that conversation, about supporting each other, talking to each other, and really becoming a force for change together, rather than struggling on your own. So, what have I got here? I think the next bit is just basically, if anybody's interested in having a look at the, so the second part of my research is a national questionnaire, which I want to be as inclusive as possible. It takes approximately 20 minutes. 10 of that's just reading the ethics. So basically just saying that I've gone through the process of ethical approval, and the questions take maybe another 10. They are quite personal, it goes on a little bit, but it will make a difference for women in the future, and about how we deliver services looking at sexual health for women in the menopause transition in the future. And if you have any feedback at all, you can if you scan either of these QR codes, you'll get the research on one and feedback just to Menti, and it'll ask you just to give a bit of feedback about how you think this session was. So that is all. I'll stop sharing and then open that up if you have any questions at all.
Any questions? That was great, thanks Sarah. The women know very much that I over talk about my vagina, because that was so I've spoke to the MP about it, and everybody knows about my vagina, because my that was the worst symptom for me, and still is, regardless of treatment. So and I over talk about it because, like you said, I think if we don't start those conversations, we then don't know that is a normal feeling that we should have, or can we do something to get that help? You talked about suicide rates, and I know between the ages of 45 and 54, that's the highest rate for women. And when the group first started, I was happy to share that I felt quite suicidal in the very early days, certainly in March. And I over talk about that because I want people to know that it's safe to share that information with us, and will help. If we keep it to ourselves, that's when we're at risk. So I think it was interesting for me to hear you say all that, because that was very much, I'm sure from the people who were there on the first day, that was very much what I was saying is kind of my journey. Hence setting up this to help ladies and men and children, because it has that ripple effect. Obviously 51% of the population go through it. 51% of the population's women, 100% of them will go through, but 100% of the population are impacted on menopause.
Absolutely. Everybody. So 50% are women, and the other 50% have sisters, children, mothers who are women. So
Is there anything that anybody wants to ask while we've got Sarah on, or do you need the QR codes putting back up? Is the QR codes going to be, is that on the presentation, Sarah, so that ladies can use that for the Facebook page? Okay.
Yes, it's not time And so you just feel free if you send it out in an email or whatever, and the ladies can fill it in if you'd like. I mean, there's lots. I'm very aware. I mean, I'd much rather being in the room with you and chatting to you, because it's a really personal, you know, you don't necessarily want to talk about that, about sex and your sexual experience in a group. I mean, you guys might, because you seem like you're really, you know, established and trust each other and things like that. So, but I'm very aware that I'm on a web call, and so it's not ideal. But I just want to say that, you know, please talk about it. You know, just as you would say, God, I'm so hot in here. You know, have that little quiet conversation with a friend. You know, it's not abnormal. It's and when you see the whole jigsaw there with the testosterone, the estrogen, the progesterone, what actually impacts it, it then starts to make sense. So there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
What I'd say as well, just adding on to those two things, is that, you know, until you've reached that menopause, you can still get pregnant. So thinking about contraception, thinking about possibly heavy bleeding and things like that. So there's medication that you can take, and Mirena coil that could be used to reduce thin the lining in the womb, and it only acts locally. The Mirena coil, so it thins the endometrium, but you don't get the systemic progesterone things like weight gain and, you know, mood swings and things like that. It just acts locally, but that can just be the change you need. And for lots of women as well, they've found that actually having the progesterone locally meant they didn't need those progesterone pessaries either. So that's an interesting find. But obviously every woman's different, and you'll find things that work for you individually. But please be aware you can get pregnant.
No, thank you. Yeah.
One thing you talked about, it was really interesting talking about serotonin and the different sort of hormones. And I think you said there were different ways you could generate serotonin. Have you got any top tips for things we could do practically for ourselves?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. So serotonin is, you know, if you have a hug, so lots of physical contact. So if sex is difficult, or if you're, you know, just don't want to have sex, that's completely fine. But lots of cuddles, stroking, just, you know, things like a nice warm bath. When you relax into a nice warm bath, serotonin's released. When you eat something like chocolate releases serotonin as well. I'm not saying in like binge on chocolate, but and things like estrogen high foods as well. So again, so if you've got more estrogen, you produce more serotonin. So things like bell peppers, what else? There's lots of foods actually which I've now just gone out of my head. But foods you can get estrogen high foods as well. So those kinds of things, looking at your diet, getting lots of physical contact in. Even if it's just, I mean, I'm dreadful because I give free hugs out to anybody who needs one. But, you know, just with your friends and just making sure that positive, you know, when you go into a room and people make you smile, that's that serotonin release. So those kinds of things, surrounding yourself in positive environments, groups that you enjoy, doing things you love, walking on the beach with the dog or whatever, things that make you smile release serotonin. So you can do that yourself. And also that M word, masturbation, also releases serotonin because it's a feel-good hormone and it helps you relax.
Explains why I went and got a big bag of peppers this week.
Yeah, we've all seen. And you're hugging everybody.
I'm just quickly, if you give us just a second, I'll just quickly get my list, because see, this is my brain fog starting. Right, so what have we got? So flax seeds. So put them in your cereal. It's also high in fibre. Dried apricots, prunes, raisins.
So our bowels will be working.
Absolutely, you'll be all sorted.
Stick with chocolate.
So broccoli, Brussels sprouts. Here we go. The list again. Be very So what
we
we've
like
got,
the chocolate bit, Sarah.
Yeah.
We like
Look,
that.
you could always
one.
dip broccoli.
And then you
broccoli
went to
dip
Brussels
chocolate.
sprouts, and then we
Yeah.
lost you a minute. The connection went.
Well, actually, that's an idea for Christmas, isn't it? There you go.
Yeah, chocolate Brussels sprouts.
Yeah. So yeah, it's you know, I mean, there's so much stuff online now, isn't there, about you know, diet and everything else. So just kind of finding what is good, what makes you feel good. So yeah. And it also depends. Be careful as well about where you get the information from. So berries, pomegranates, peaches, ginger. There's lots of like avocado, salmon, nuts. All of the stuff that's really healthy for you basically are full of natural hormones.
Brilliant.
And chocolate.
That's lovely, Sarah. Has anyone got any questions? No. If we do have questions and we wanted to send you those, because you are you on our Facebook group, Sarah?
Yes, I think I am, but my email's on the presentation.
Right.
So if you wanted to send me something private,
Yeah, I
then
was
please
thinking
feel
that,
free to do that.
Yeah.
And also, if you wanted to, there's a link if you choose to take part in the research. Then there is a link at the end where you can leave an email contact to take part in a focus group at the end. But that won't be happening because I just started I've taken 6 months out of my PhD to work with the chief midwifery team on a national programme. But when I restart that, the focus group, so it'll be in about maybe a year's time. So if anybody's interested, I'd love to talk to you.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. It was lovely to meet you.
You too. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you. Bye.